Hey everyone, welcome to another fun edition of Howdy Partner. I am your host, James Spencer. I am with the Scale PSA team here at AWS, and today we're going to be talking to our friends at Codefresh. They're going to be showing us some cool EKS tricks that they've developed that we can demo off to you guys. Let's go around and let's just introduce ourselves real quick. Shardul, you've been here before. Welcome
Yeah.
back.
Hey everyone. I'm Shardul Vaiyda. If you joined us last time, you know who I am. If you don't remember, that's a shame. But I'm also a partner solutions architect. I work with James, and I have the privilege of knowing the excellent people over at Codefresh, who are going to show off their platform.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Are we gonna go? What, go in alphabetical order here? I can go.
Yeah, Christian, you
You go first because you have to leave
preeminent.
early.
That's right. That's right. So, Christian Hernandez at Codefresh here. I'm a developer experience lead. Today, I'm actually here as comedic relief. Maybe I don't know. I wore the shirt, so I
I will
figured
take it.
that. Yeah, that's right. So I'm topical, and as James noted, I have to drop a little early, but excited to be here nonetheless. Dan's the main man.
Oh, Christian, come on. This is a team. This team effort. So yeah, my name is Dan Garfield. I'm the chief open source officer and co-founder of a company called Codefresh. For those that aren't familiar with it, we do GitOps and enable faster developer experiences to deploy to cloud native applications. And the way that I explain it to my mom is always, we make software for people so that they can make more software using our software. And she's like, so it's a growth market. I'm like, yeah, the more that we make it, the more that other people make more. So that's perfect. And so I'm on the open source team, and Christian's on my team here, and has been with us, I think, like 3 months now, but he's been super impactful in the GitOps community over the last 2 years, since we started the whole GitOps initiative and created the GitOps working group and all that stuff. And yeah, we're just excited to hang out. And he's really here because he's the Twitch guy. And I was like, what do? We just hang out and chat. And he was like, yeah, don't worry. I'll help guide you through what a Twitch stream is like. I mean, I've watched Twitch streams, but usually they're like gamers. And so I don't know, for the AWS context, for the Kubernetes context, it's a little bit different, I guess.
Yeah, you're the one who actually looks like he has the most streams set up in the background there. Like I've just got we got a couch in the back and stuff.
I do have a green screen that I can pull down, but
oh yeah, you mentioned that. That's right.
We're just enjoying the ambiance today, I think.
That's right.
Cool. So what exactly, Shardul? What exactly do we know what we're going to be showing today? It has to do with EKS. You're the liaison, I want to say. Maybe you can enlighten us.
Yeah, absolutely. So Codefresh is going to be showing off their platform and what they can do when it's connected with Amazon's EKS offering, which is Elastic Kubernetes Service. I'm going to talk a little bit about EKS because that's kind of what I'm here for. Elastic Kubernetes Service is essentially a managed AWS flavor of standard Kubernetes, and it is completely Kubernetes compliant, which means if you deploy on EKS, you can deploy on any Kubernetes cluster. That's pretty much it, honestly. It's just Amazon-flavored Kubernetes. What these guys do over here is extremely cool. They bring in GitOps, which is essentially the underlying philosophy of DevOps, but powered by version control or powered by Git. And I'm gonna let them take over from here because they're the experts.
Yeah, that was perfect. Yeah, so when it comes to GitOps is really an opinionated approach to how to solve a lot of problems of DevOps. So I view it as sort of a subset or an implementation of DevOps. And there was an effort created, I want to say we started it almost 2 years ago to create the open GitOps
Foundation. It feels like 2 years ago. Yeah. There's a lot has happened. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't say foundation. It was called the GitOps Working Group, and it was founded underneath the CNCF. And Christian was there representing Red Hat at the time. Since just joined Codefresh, don't want to harp on that too much, but excited about it. AWS was a partner in launching that, and we had some really great support from AWS. GitHub was there, Azure was there, Weaveworks was there, and the goal was to really standardize what goes into GitOps, because when people talk about GitOps, there's a lot of like back and forth of like, well, like, you know, I'm using Terraform, you know, and I'm putting my config inside of Git, and when I make a Git commit at the other end, I get a result. So is that doing GitOps? And we really felt like that was kind of the beginning, but it wasn't the end. And the additional things that we need to be doing with GitOps are, you need to have a GitOps agent that is essentially taking advantage of this declarative infrastructure you've put together and monitoring everything that's happening in your production environments and looking for any kind of drift and then handling remediation. So if somebody goes and changes live production, is there a system that catches that? That's a really great way of saying like, hey, am I fully embracing GitOps? If I go and change something manually in production, is there a system in place that would actually correct that? If there is, then you're probably, you know, well on your way with GitOps. And if there's not, there's maybe more to take advantage of from the system. So that's kind of where, yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, I think also it's just like the why, right? Like, why did we do like open GitOps? And it's like, we didn't want the term to get away from itself, kind of like how cloud did, right? We didn't want to like to turn it into cloud, because now like cloud, like what does that mean? It's like, well, like, you know, do I have a cloud here because I have a server, you know, that I connect to for my storage? You know, so that's kind of like the idea. It's like, well, let's get a consensus of what it means to do GitOps before it ran away, right? Because that train can run away pretty quick.
Yeah. And it devolves into everybody arguing about what it is and what it isn't. And so what we did with the GitOps working group is we brought together, and we did this as an open process. We had over 88 miles per hour, over 88 contributors, I think.
Over 9,000.
Yeah, and then we had over 60 different companies that were involved, and we basically spent like 9 months going through and debating and cutting down and saying like, okay, what are the scenarios? What do we need to cover? And we came up with what we call the GitOps principles. They're currently version 1.0. There's 4 of them. I threw in the Twitch chat a link to opengitops.dev for people that are interested in following up on that. And there's nothing on here that talks about Kubernetes. Kubernetes is really good for taking advantage of these principles. Doesn't mean you have to be using Kubernetes, but Kubernetes just happens to be a really great target to use. So we do definitely recommend, and we see most people start there. And then EKS for us has been, I mean, AWS has been a great partner for us because EKS is a really great provider of Kubernetes. I mean, it works really well for us. We're able to scale it really quickly. We're able to provision them really quickly. And it works really well with our solution. I mean, we support Kubernetes in general, of course. But we do notice that with AWS users, you know, you're used to working with the AWS tool set. You want to have your single sign-on operating the way you expect it to. So when we get into like the demo and we'll be showing some stuff, we'll show how it works really well with EKS. But anyway, that's, you know, you guys have been a great partner for us from that perspective. And probably, you know, most of our users are EKS users right now. I think that it's the majority of our users are EKS users.
Yeah. I noticed you mentioned two of my favorite things. You used the word remediations. Anyone who's watching from my team, we know all about remediations. That's like day in, that's the bread and butter, is just kind of fixing stuff like that. And then also I love you say you need to define what GitOps and DevOps is. There's a joke with me and my old mentor was DevOps is not a thing, it's a state of mind. Like everyone, by having you like actually set kind of those parameters, it helps define those things, which because everyone has their own definition of what DevOps, GitOps could be. So that helps you actually kind of nail down the specifics of what we're going to cover.
Yeah, it's a state of mind you achieve if everything is just perfect and you're meditating.
Yeah.
And then suddenly,
yeah, that's right.
DevOps has been achieved. You have Zen.
DevOps has been achieved.
What I like to say is that, like, if DevOps is the culture, GitOps is how that culture looks like in practice, right? And so, like, that's how I always, like, well, what's DevOps? What's GitOps? It's like, well, GitOps is DevOps realized. I don't know. I don't know how to. There's a catchphrase in there somewhere that I almost reached, but like the idea is that, yeah, DevOps is the culture, like you said, it's a state of mind. GitOps is just what that looks like, right? What it looks like realized.
Yeah, and so this, I mean, this goes then into like, okay, so now we have principles, we have ideas about, we have an opinion about how this stuff should be achieved. What are we doing when it comes to the tools? Well, we help maintain a project called Argo, and most people at this point are familiar with Argo. It's probably the fastest growing, most popular GitOps tool in the world. I think it's the second or third most active open source project in the CNCF ecosystem, and that's behind like Kubernetes and maybe OpenTelemetry. It kind of goes back and forth, but that shows the strength of it. So we help maintain that project, and one of the tools within the Argo project is Argo CD, which is probably the most popular. It is the most popular GitOps tool. And then to help people bring the GitOps principles to the operation of Argo itself, we also started a project called Argo CD Autopilot. So Argo CD is a really great tool, and you can use it in you can use it, and there's this great UI that helps you deploy stuff. But a lot of times people, as they first start using it, they don't necessarily have like the best practices about like how to, like, for example, maybe they deploy Argo CD, but then all the applications that are running are operating with GitOps, but maybe they're not managing Argo CD itself that way. And maybe they don't know how their repositories should be structured, and kind of wedding all that stuff together. So we created this project called Argo CD Autopilot, and I'll throw in a link to the docs on that one as well. Sorry, I'm just dumping links on everybody. And if you were just gonna like start playing with this is a great way to do it in the open source. We're gonna show you maybe an even better one to do it that requires less work as we get into the demo here. But ultimately, the ideas of GitOps, and I'll get this criticism from people sometimes where they're like, hey man, GitOps, you guys didn't invent anything new. I was doing this back in 1994, and I had this tools and that tools and the other thing to do it. And I always think that's awesome. Like in 1994, you were rocking it, and that was awesome. You were way ahead of everybody else. What we're trying to do here is not invent the car. We're trying to make it accessible to everybody.
Make a better car.
Yeah,
Yep.
like Henry Ford, he didn't invent the car. I'm sure someone walked around and they're like, Henry, you didn't invent the car. I built a car 30 years ago, and my car is awesome. And we're like, that's awesome for you, but a million other people want cars. And that's what we're trying to do. So that's what we're trying to do with GitOps. That's what we're trying to do with Argo. That's what we're trying to do with Codefresh, is just make this stuff accessible, easy to pick up and use. Because if you can do that, like ultimately, like the whole reason that we want to do this stuff is I want to take the barriers away from my engineering team to build software. I want them to be able to focus on that and be happier. And I want my operations team to be able to focus on just providing like the best quality of service on their for the platform, for the software. And so if I can remove a bunch of barriers by adopting GitOps as a process, and I can make it templated and straightforward, then I make my engineering organization more effective. I make my team less distracted. My engineers are going to be happier. They're not going to quit as often, or they're not going to, that's like a metric. That should be like a core metric for everybody right now.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's a metric. Yeah, exactly. How cool, how easy can we make it so that way they don't jump ship? Exactly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I always like the philosophy. It's like these tools that we have that sometimes we're impassioned over, as you can see. Dan has Argo in the background all over the place. I have Argo here. I also have I have this. I don't know if Dan has this. I have the travel version.
Oh,
but we get impassioned with these tools. But like the tools really should a good tool should get out of your way. Like a good tool should make it seem like you don't know that you're using it, right? And that's what I like about kind of that philosophy is like, let's remove these barriers. Let's make it easier. Like we really just want to deliver software. Let's not focus on building the best platform. Let's just build awesome software to deliver.
Yeah, there's an old joke that like every team ends up trying to build a PaaS, right? Like every option.
Yeah.
And if you think about like what GitOps is doing and like what we do with our platform, it's like we're not trying to be a PaaS, but we're trying to enable the same kinds of values for people. So maybe that's a good place to actually jump in and start showing some of our platform, because I mentioned that there's a couple of tools at the top of the thing and we threw links up, but if you do want to do GitOps, if you do want to start adopting these things and trying them out, the best way that we recommend is to jump into Codefresh, because Codefresh has a free hosted version of this stuff that you can use, and you don't have to deploy it yourself, manage it yourself. And we really, this goes exactly to the goal that we had of let's make this super accessible so that everybody can start doing it.
Yeah. Just let me know when you want to throw up the...
Yeah, you want to... I've got... let's see. Yeah, you want to throw up the slide, and then I won't slide for too long.
Little sliding's all right.
Christian said, bruh, on Twitch, we don't slide much.
Yeah.
We don't slide.
Little bit's good, but didn't want to kill everyone with a deck.
Little bit goes a long way.
Yeah.
So we have this hosted GitOps platform with Codefresh, and we also have a self-hosted version, a hybrid version that a lot of our customers use. But ultimately, the reason that we built this was stuff that we were talking about. It's improving the core development release lifecycle, and there's actually a standard for measuring this called DORA. If people aren't familiar with this, is a standard that the industry has settled on, which is basically measuring 4 things: deployment frequency, change failure rate, time to restore service, and lead time for changes. Now, these 4 measures are not there. You know what it reminds me of, Christian? This might be too philosophical. You tell me if I'm going off the deep end here. But I heard one time somebody say that happiness is not a destination. Happiness is the byproduct of living a purpose-filled life. And when I think about the DORA metrics, these aren't the destination. They are the byproduct of taking all of the crap out of your developers' way so they can be effective with their time. You know what I'm saying? Think about it.
Yeah.
I'm letting that marinate a little bit. You threw a
so once you've done that and you've achieved that DevOps nirvana or whatever we were talking about earlier after the journey.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, I heard a really good quote from somebody who was talking about this, and they were like, well, we look at deployment frequency and lead time for changes because we found that these are the most predictive of engineering productivity and happiness and job satisfaction. So it's like if you just said, hey, everybody, we need to deploy 50 times a day. It's like, hey, my deployment frequency went up. We did it, right? But it's like, well, you probably deployed stuff that was broken, so now your change failure rate went up. And like, did you actually solve the problems inherent to your engineering and operations organization to allow them to do that? So that's ultimately like, we'll know we're successful because these metrics are going to improve. And we have found that when people adopt GitOps, these metrics do improve. And they improve typically dramatically. So that's kind of the jumping off point. That's the intro slide. There was just one intro slide.
Okay.
And now we can get into like
best presentation ever.
Hey, this is a no judgment free zone. This is a safe place.
So we're gonna jump into Codefresh. This is the Codefresh dashboard here. And you can see that I do have some stuff deployed, but you can see I don't have a runtime going. And when we talk about a runtime, we're talking, in this case, the hosted runtime is a GitOps operator. It is an Argo CD instance that is managed for you. We actually run these on AWS using vCluster and Crossplane behind the scenes. So I'm going to click install on this, and this is going to kick off. Basically, it's going to create a hosted, like a Kubernetes environment for me. It's going to set up my GitOps operator on it, and then we'll show you how we can actually deploy applications with this and how GitOps works. While it's doing that, I lied. There are more slides.
So
bait and switch.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So
Yeah,
you said you set up this cluster earlier. So you just imported it into the Codefresh platform, or can you create clusters from here as well?
So you don't create clusters from here in like the UI though. If the way that this is working is actually when I hit create a runtime behind the scenes, and this is because we're hosting it, we actually make a Git commit into a repo that is being watched by our own GitOps instance, our own hosted GitOps instance, which then triggers the creation of an additional V cluster within our EKS clusters.
Okay.
And we do that with Crossplane. So I didn't make a diagram for that or anything because I was really going to focus on this. But that's like what's happening behind the scenes. At the end of the day, you're just going to get an isolated managed instance of our GitOps offering, which includes Argo CD and Argo rollouts and stuff.
Cool.
So what we'll demo here basically has 4 parts. First, we're going to start the runtime. So we just did that. Next, we're going to connect a repo. In this case, we're going to be using GitHub, but if you're using Bitbucket or GitLab, it'd be the same thing, same process. Then we're going to connect an EKS cluster that I have already set up, but we'll talk a little bit how I would create an EKS cluster just simply. And then we'll create an application in the repo, which will trigger it to sync into AWS. So that's the simple flow. Very, very straightforward. And if you think about the way that like you used to, maybe many of the people are deploying software today, this is a lot easier. It's a lot easier to just define what you want to deploy and then let it be deployed than like having one person that knows how to do it, you know?
Yeah, like I never thought I'd be like one of those people who's like back in my day. But like when you work with some of these newer technologies, right? Like Argo CD and Argo rollouts, specifically Argo rollouts, I go, man, I wish I had this because back in my day,
yeah, you kids have it so easy nowadays.
Yeah, you get it so easy nowadays because trying to.
I remember emailing patches to our IT guy.
Oh no!
Yeah, the patch files, right?
So that he could apply them. Yeah, and then we had issues because there were variations between my environment and the production environment, which obviously containers solve that really well, as Shardul mentioned in the chat earlier. But yeah, and then I thought, oh well, there's got to be a better way to do this, and so I started installing like Git on my environments, and then trying to check out, and it sucked. It was not good. It was a bummer. Yeah, back in my day, we had to cluster uphill both ways in the snow.
Yeah, exactly.
That's perfect, Eric. So now this runtime is up, we can look at it, and it'll show us. Oh, sorry, hang on. If I look at my runtimes, you can see I've got my Codefresh hosted runtime here, and you can see that we have a number of tools that are basically batched into that. So kind of our own flavors of Argo CD and events and workflows and secrets and things. And then you can see I also have, we'll talk about this later, I also have an AWS worker with my full, my own runtime installed. So this is the hosted one. This is the AWS one. But let's go back and we're going to connect up the Git provider here, and I'm just going to authorize using GitHub. In this case, I am going to be using Codefresh. So I'm going to authorize that. Don't mind me. Bing. Okay, now that's done, I can select which organization I want to create my Git repos in. What the heck are these Git repos? Well, this is going to be the configuration for my my GitOps operator here and everything that's going to be happening in my hosted runtime. And then this is going to be a default Git source where I can add applications. And all I have to do to deploy is make a commit here. So I'm going to hit create on these. And those should be created pretty quick. Let's see. All right, if I go look, I don't think it made the commit on this one. So I want to restart it.
Oh, it looks like you need to validate your token.
Oh, I can double check that. Yeah, I can double check my token because I did
okay.
remove a bunch of them. No, but this one should be okay.
Yeah.
Quick question, Dan. Would you recommend manually editing any of those repositories?
Yes. Yeah, I would be totally fine with it. And you'll see, I mean, like creating an application is so easy that it's worth doing. I mean, I think it's worthwhile. Like, and I do think that you should at some point move to like using automation to generate changes. But when you first start it, you know, then it's fine. Okay, yeah. So it looks like it got there.
Yes.
So yeah, it's created my internal configuration here. And if I go and I look at my Git sources for this guy.
There we go.
So right now it didn't create my Git source. So I'll just create it here really quick. And we'll just call this Codefresh runtime applications. And I'm going to select this environment, Codefresh runtime applications environment. Should find it for me. And I can specify a branch. I'll just use the main branch, and I'm just going to use the root as the path. So if you already have a structure, and we'll talk about Git structure in a minute, but if you already have a Git structure, you can just inherit whatever is there. And I can set up whatever kind of includes or excludes I have. So if I already have a structure, I can say like, oh, this environment gets these ones, this environment gets those ones, whatever. So we'll just create that Git source. And this is actually, any time I make a write operation in the platform, it's actually going to go and make a commit into Git. So if we look in this internal shared config, you can see there's actually now a change where it's added an additional Git source. All it did is commit what I just did. So you can see these files, they're not crazy complicated. Like you could manually make one of these and add it in very easily. So just having a way to do it automatically is a very nice feature to have.
Yeah, it turns the platform turns your click ops into get ops because everything like it's a commit back, right? So like notice how like it didn't say save config, it just said commit, because that's what it is, right? It turns your you clicking into, it just translates those into Git commits. So
nice.
So now we're ready to connect a Kubernetes cluster. And we have a CLI that I can install in order to interact with this, which I've already done. And so all I have to do is cf cluster add Codefresh hosted. And this is going to kick off everything for me. So let me switch my screen share.
Hey, Dan,
Yeah.
I have a question. Christian sees it. Asking, does it get along with Backstage.io?
Oh, yeah.
Actually.
I haven't used Backstage, but I know that this came up the other day. It's like a tool that people use to manage all of their, basically they manage all of their DevOps tools. They put it all in Backstage, and then I can jump between them really easily. That seems to be what I remember. And I do remember that we had a customer who wanted that and that we did it. So my understanding is that, yes, it works with it. I haven't, it's not a tool that I'm super familiar with, but that's my understanding. Okay, so you should have my terminal now. And you can see that in this case, all I did, this is actually a different cluster, but
Oh.
I just used EKS control to create my cluster. If I were doing this like for my production, I would probably do this either with Terraform, or I would actually be using Crossplane plus Codefresh to provision additional clusters and basically manage them as additional GitOps resources. But here we can do our CF cluster add Codefresh hosted. Hopefully I'm still logged in. And I'm going to pick this OSS staging cluster, which is an EKS cluster I connected to. And earlier I authed using AWS SSO login and set a profile so I could do all that. So what this does, this command, is it actually creates a service account on that on the target cluster that we're going to be deploying to. This is where my applications are actually going to run. It creates a cluster role binding, a config map, a secret for all those things, and then it creates a job, which then sends the registration information back to Codefresh, and then you'll be able to see. I switch my screen back. Maybe I should just share my whole screen instead of switching between windows every time. I'll think about it. Yeah, so now when I go back into Codefresh, you can see that it's found that cluster OSS staging, and you can see my EKS instance here. And so now I've got my cluster connected. I've done all the prerequisites so I can start deploying. So now I can actually deploy it. So if I look at my applications dashboard, this is going to show me all of my running resources. I'm going to switch to the Codefresh hosted instance that we just set up. And you can see I just have this one application that is basically empty. There's nothing currently deployed over here. So let me try to add an application. We'll call this demo app AWS Twitch. And I'm going to select my Codefresh hosted runtime. And this is going to generate for me an application YAML. So if you're not familiar with Argo CD and how we operate, basically we have a custom resource definition in Kubernetes called application. And the GitOps controller, Argo CD, monitors that CRD, and then that's what it uses as its definition of what applications should be deployed, which means resources. Basically, it defines a source and a target destination. So in this case, I'm going to pick a application that I have called color coded and specify this. And I actually have some deployment manifests in here. So we'll snag that. We'll target the head, and we'll target this deploy/Kubernetes path, which just has my Kubernetes manifests. And then I'm going to deploy to my OSS staging cluster. I'm going to deploy to a new namespace that we'll call Twitch Day. Sounds like a good one. And then I have my sync policies. So an automatic sync policy means that it will automatically check for updates and then sync them onto the cluster. Prune resources means that if I delete something in Git, it will then be automatically deleted in my cluster. And self-heal means that if somebody changes something in the live cluster, like I manually kubectl'd in and changed something, it would pick up that change and then automatically correct it. And then I'm going to auto create the namespace that I'm deploying to. And I don't need to prune or mess with any of this other stuff. All of this that I just did in the UI, you can see it generates the YAML. So this is exactly what it will look like. And at the end, I get a commit. And this is going to allow me to actually commit into a Git source that I added. And, I need to re-add the Git source. But here, let's just do it this way. So let's say that I have all this stuff here. And let's say I wasn't going to use the UI to do it. Maybe I was going to do it as a pull request. So I'm sitting in my runtime applications repo, and let's see, what's the best way? Well, I want to go and edit this. I want to go create a file in Git and push it. So I'll just do it really quick. I'll just do it.
I mean, you could just do add a file. That'll let you just create a
Oh
file.
yeah.
UI.
Okay, thank you. Yes.
Yeah.
It's like I don't ever do that.
Yeah, never do that.
I never do it this way. And I'll call this demo apps with twitch.yaml. There we go. And once I've done this, I'll commit it directly into, well, let's create a new branch. We should always do that. So you can see this is just all. So you can see when you asked me earlier, like, hey, would you ever edit this manually? It's like,
Commit straight to main.
yeah, I could. Because they're pretty easy to do, right?
Yeah.
And I like to do pull requests and then approve them myself because it increases how many pull requests I have merged.
Oh, nice. Yeah, you got to pad those stats.
Everybody loves, if I can approve my own pull request, there's
now you get a badge where you've opened and created a pull request and closed it in 5 minutes.
Yeah, and there should be a badge where it's just patting yourself on the back.
You know what? Just as a side note, it's kind of funny. In the building I work at in Seattle for AWS, the ceiling looks exactly. I'm sure it was intentional. It looks exactly like your Git activity. Like there's light green, dark green squares, then blank spots. Then I swear it had to have been done intentionally. It's the funniest thing. Anyway,
that's great. So when I recreated this Git source, I think I made a mistake, so I'm gonna go fix it. So let's go and yeah, we're fine with that. So I'm gonna go over to my runtimes. I'm gonna go to Codefresh hosted. Go to my Git sources.
No,
and
it's no longer there.
Yeah, I think I remove it. Some issue with it. So let's try it again. And we can work around it if we need to. Double check that I have a main branch. Yeah, I do. It's not an old one. And the path I think can just be dot. I might have done the // or something. I don't know. Create this Git source. Okay, so that's going to redefine it, resync it to Git, and then it should show up after a minute or two. If there was an issue with my other Git source, we might just reset it up or something. I get in a habit of when I do these demos, I like nuke everything, and then I go to reset them up, and sometimes I forget to like nuke it all. But we should be okay. I'm feeling lucky, feeling really lucky.
Sounds like you need to get ops your demos.
I do need to get ops my demos. I do. Synchronize this. And we should see it in my my shared config. So yeah, we can see it was created here. Yeah. Maybe I'll go remove it, reinitialize it. Yeah, I think we should do that. See how easy it is?
Yeah.
All right. So let's what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to delete my hosted instance and we'll just start it again.
Yeah, no sweat. Where are you joining us from, Dan?
I am based in Salt Lake City, Utah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, my family's out there.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was born in Provo.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Well, that's south of Point of the Mountain. We call that the dark place. We don't go there.
The dark place.
It's like in the Lion King.
Yeah.
You're like everywhere the light touches, and like the light doesn't touch down there. We don't drive down
there.
Yeah. All right, so I just reset it, and so now we should be able to go back and I'll make sure that these are cleaned, and I'm gonna reset both these repos too, just to be safe. And before this, were both of you familiar with GitOps? Like you've heard of it?
Not from the strict sense Yeah, before, I was a DevOps engineer, and it was very much fly by the seat of your pants, whatever we can get to work for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So I totally understand the like the actual, you know, like you were saying, being able to streamline it and actually make good definition of it and everything, rather than just this is how we're going to do this project and this is how we're going to do this project, and yeah.
Yeah, it's like once you start doing it and you click into it, and you're right. Like I haven't totally GitOpsified my demo because trying to, well, anyway, doesn't matter. But all right, so we'll just start it again. We'll just hit install. We'll reboot one. Hopefully it was able to clear out and we'll be okay. It's like the kind of thing that happens only because you do the demos and reset them all the time, and then you like, it's not an issue as you actually go to scale. It's like these lab kind of things that we create, these lab experiences.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's just what it is. So after we do this flow, we're going to go into an import flow. So like for people that already have a GitOps repo that exists, and the way that we're going to do that is I'm going to add a production cluster. So then I'll have a staging cluster and a production cluster. And then I'll connect up a GitOps repo that I already have set up. And this would probably be a good moment to talk a little bit about repo structure. So I have an example directory structure in this OSS apps repo. This one's public, by the way, so you're welcome to take this. And anything else that I, am good at or not good at, this is a pretty good directory structure. So the way this works is I have my application configuration. So these are like my manifests. And I have them basically in a folder for each environment. And then I have a subfolder for applications. And then I have my manifest for my applications. Sorry, I'm explaining this so poorly. Let me reset. My app configs describe my application, the application custom resource I was talking about. So I have anytime I add an application configuration under this production folder or this staging folder, that will then pick up and automatically get deployed to my production or staging instance. Then I have my manifest folder with basically for each application, I have a base, and then I have a production and a staging specific flavor. So if we were going to look at like, for example, I have this colors application, and if I'm looking in staging, here I'm using Customize. And if you're not familiar with Customize, it's a really fantastic configuration management tool. And if you look in here, basically I have my base resources, I apply patches that are specific to staging, and then for the sake of demoing, I have a strategic merge where I can just update the version of my application that's running, the version of the image. So when you structure your repos this way, basically I have a repo that is my application. So I'm doing all my development over here. I'm rocking and rolling. And when I'm ready, I cut a new release, and then I just open a pull request to say, hey, take my new release. Once that pull request is merged, it will automatically sync, right? Straightforward. Does that make sense?
So far, so good.
Okay, so far, so good. So that two repo structure is pretty critical. A lot of people get stuck in the mentality of using like a single repo. So for example, in this repo, you can see I do have a deploy manifest set. And what I'll see people do is they'll have their applications in this repo, and they'll have their manifest in the repo. And then they'll be like, oh, I have a branch for production, and I have a branch for staging, and I have a branch for development. And I merge through these branches, and that's how I promote my releases. That model based on Git flow is really based more on like, that's kind of a relic of how we manage applications. And it doesn't really apply to how we should manage our deployment manifest in a GitOps scenario. So using this model, if I look at my app so like, let's say I'm looking at my colors application and we look at the base, this has all of the manifests needed to deploy that application. And it references the release that is coming from that application repo. And then I can model all of my environments for it here, all my flavors for it here. and then I can manage them all in like a very straightforward way. And I disconnect the issue of trying to couple my application changes with releases. They should be decoupled, right? I should be specifying my releases separately. All right, so let's reconnect this. Gonna authorize GitHub. Bada bing, bada boom. Got my repo. I reset both of these. Oh, not this one. Not that one. This one. Yep. Okay, I reset both of these so I can go ahead and hit create. We should be okay. All right. So now as I look in here, you can see it's created all of the configuration for that repo. And in here, did I get anything? It should be empty. Just a README. Okay, perfect.
Cool.
We're set up. We're ready to go. All right, so now we'll reconnect that cluster, and I'll just run it again because you guys already saw it. And actually, while we're taking a second, I'll just share my screen, my whole screen, and then we'll just zoom in where needed.
Excuse me.
Share. Okay. And I'll just make all this stuff a little bit bigger. This will be easier for us to jump between. Okay. So I re-added my cluster. Here it is. We're rocking and rolling. Our Git sources are set up. They're running properly. So let's go back and actually deploy an application. And we'll do this color app AWS live. Select my Codefresh hosted runtime. This is the GitOps instance that I'm going to be deploying with, and I'll deploy to my target cluster. So again, going to define the source repository, and in this case, just for the demo, I'm going to use my color-coded application and specify my manifests. Specify my namespace, and then I already explained all these settings. I like to leave these guys on, and then I will go ahead and commit this. Commit that bad boy, and we'll see over here that it has created this manifest for me, which will then automatically be synced to my cluster and deploy the application.
Nice.
So here you can see we just have the one Git source app. And basically, this is an app of apps. So this is an application that's defined in the internal repo that says, basically, look inside of this other repo, and any application manifest you find should be synced, and they'll be deployed. So here you can see it just picked it up. It's now syncing the change, in this case, creating the application. And this will progress for a moment, and then it will come to healthy once all of the pods and things have been deployed. And we can look at this live. So if I click into this, you can actually see all of the services that are running. So I can see this is the application definition. This is the service that's running. These are the two different endpoints that are available. There's a deployment here. There's a replica set. There are 2 pods running. If I click into a pod, I can see its definition, and I can also see the logs. So I can see that this thing just spun up. So this allows me to actually do debugging as well. Like I don't need to be in kubectl. And the permissions for this are based on my permissions in Git. And of course, we have role-based access control, so I could customize this so that I can restrict who has access to the logs and stuff. And then if I look at the release timeline, this will show me that this release that I just did, it actually has issues tied from Jira, and it has a pull request associated with it. This is not the pull request. This is actually the, okay. For people, I don't know how many people in the chat, like chat if y'all are using GitOps today, but lots of times when you use this 2 repo approach, my manifests are over here, my application is over here. When you update your GitOps repo, The only thing it's really aware of is like maybe a version change.
Mm-hmm.
But that version change carries with it all of this stuff that came from the artifacts that were built. And so what Codefresh is doing here is it's going through and looking at all the artifacts, in this case, this color purple image, and it's saying, okay, that image was created. What's all the information associated with that? Who made commits onto that image? Who had pull requests to change things that went into that image? Who had issues that went into that image? And if I had multiples of these, it would show multiple. And if I'll show you really quick. I'm going to jump into the Codefresh Inc. account. So this is how we use Codefresh to deploy Codefresh. And I'll show you just an example application in here. If we look at V2 production and I look at my release timeline, you can see today we've updated 5 times. We have 5 releases that went up. And if I look at like this one, for example, you can see all the different elements that were updated, and I can see all the committers, and I can see all the commits made by each committer, and I can see the Jira issues and the pull requests, and I can see the CI build that happened. I can jump into that and see, the CI pipeline that ran, and all that information is carried with the release because it's attached all of that to the artifacts that went into the release. So this is just a really cool way of bringing the entire release lifecycle together and making it a lot easier to like debug and figure out what went wrong and rock and roll.
So real quick, is all of this information hidden away, or is this something Codefresh is inferring, or like could someone with extensive Kubernetes knowledge or extensive like Git knowledge still pull all this information out?
So the way that we do it is when you create an image, and let's look at like one that's currently deployed is this colors application, and we look at this image purple. What we do is when you create an image, you can attach information to that artifact, and then in the GitOps dashboards, all that information is automatically carried through. So I can have custom information on here, and then we have integrations for things like Jira. So my Jira ticket is tracked on here. I also have like build inflow information, so like the workflow that's attached, the CI workflow that's attached. And this, by the way, is a Codefresh CI workflow. We actually also support, if let's say you're using GitHub Actions today, or you're using Jenkins today, and you are like, hey man, this is cool, but I have 5,000 pipelines. Well, we can actually automatically attach the information from these other external CI providers as well. So you don't have to be using Codefresh for CI. There are a lot of good reasons to use Codefresh for CI, but we also don't want it to be like a stumbling block. If you're just trying to do GitOps and you want to start getting this stuff, it's like, okay, we're not going to tell you need to go and update 5,000 pipelines to do it. We're just going to pull it up and sync it automatically. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And you can add additional annotations onto these, and they'll carry through automatically. So you can get pretty custom with it if you want to. So yeah, there you go. So that was the setting up the hosted. And the next thing we're going to do is import applications, and we're going to add this production cluster. So let's go add our production cluster. I'm going to go back, and you can see I've got my Codefresh hosted. I've got my AWS worker, and I've got my topology view. And I'm going to add a cluster here. Again, I already have the CLI, so I'm just going to use this CF cluster add and then the runtime name. So we'll just do CF cluster add. Yeah, Codefresh hosted right here. And now I'm just going to specify a different cluster. I'm going to specify my OSS prod cluster. This is another EKS cluster that I have waiting in the wings, ready to go. So again, it's going to create that service account, and it's going to run a job, which will then ping Codefresh and send the information. So here now I've created this service account. You can see I now have my production here. So I've got staging, I've got production, and now I'm ready to import my additional repository. So that repository I was showing you earlier, this OSS apps repo, I basically want to get the app configs here and deploy those because I already have this structure in place. So the way I'm going to do that is all I'm going to do is I'm going to add an additional Git source. So I'm going to go to Codefresh hosted. I'm going to go to Git source. Now I could do this all in Git, right? This is every change I'm making here is actually showing up in Git as well. So here I'll specify a name, OSS apps. I'll grab the OSS apps repo. There it is. Grab the main branch. And then my path is going to be this app configs folder. And this could be custom. This could be whatever, whatever structure you already have in place, you can basically just import. And in this case, I don't need to do any includes or excludes. It's just going to find all the application YAMLs that exist recursively underneath this. And I have applications for both staging and production. So
quick question there. How does Codefresh know what's staging and what's production? Is it just the name of the folder?
Yeah, so I'll show you in here. In my application configs, I have my staging applications, and their destination is just the name of a cluster OSS staging. So as long as that's specified, it can pick it up. Now, when you set a destination, you can do it based on the URL of where the cluster exists, but OSS staging could be ephemeral. So I just do it by name, and then I can delete the cluster, re-add the cluster. It doesn't matter. And
as long as the namespace matches, it'll work.
It'll pick up the name, the name of the cluster that I defined for my GitOps instance, and then it'll pick it up from there. So in this case, I'm actually want to import both staging and production all at once. I could import them one at a time. And actually, before I import it, I'm going to go over really quick. I'll make sure that okay. In these clusters, I want to be doing progressive delivery. So in my staging instance, you can see I don't have any Argo components installed there. I'm actually going to install Argo rollouts. And if you're not familiar with Argo rollouts, this can be used independently of Argo CD. You can use it by itself. And what this does is it creates a rollout object, which is based on a deployment, and it specifies what should happen for a canary release or a blue-green deployment. And so you need to have this on your destination clusters so that it can understand that rollout object, which it can then use to deploy to using a canary release or a blue-green release. And I'm going to install it on both OSS staging and prod. So, because this is going to lead into the next demo, which is we're going to do progressive delivery. So now I go back and I've got everything ready. I'm going to create my Git source. I'll go ahead and create that. And that's going to make a commit again to this internal shared config. So we'll see right now, it just picked up this additional Git source. So it's an application. The name is OSS apps. It specifies the repo, the path, the target revision, and all the other arguments that we talked about. And this one is going to deploy into my GitOps instance, my Codefresh hosted instance. And once it's done that, then it will sync and deploy all the changes elsewhere. So if I go back over here and I look at my applications, and again, I'm going to look at my Codefresh hosted instance only. You can see it's actually picked up under OSS apps. It's picked up this application set, and that's starting to sync, and it's going to pick up the rest of the applications shortly. So as the syncing occurs, yeah, you can see it's already picked up now my staging instance of my colors application. I've got an autopilot demo staging. I've got a colors prod and application set. We haven't talked about application sets, but application sets are application generators. So let's say you wanted to deploy 1,000 flavors of an application. You can use application sets to generate 1,000 flavors of an application for all different targets and environments and whatever. Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I mean, just out of curiosity, how would doing something like this take if you weren't using GitOps? Like, how long would something like this take if you weren't using GitOps?
Well,
like manually entering in, or is there like a function that I can use?
well, okay. So I'll make an analogy. So I used to have this. I hope you guys can empathize with this. But I used to have a side hustle doing basically emergency server administration stuff. So someone would call me up and they'd be like, "Our production is broken. Come fix it." And I would drop everything and just work at it really hard and charge crazy rates because I'd be working, at 4 a.m. or whatever. And I got really good at setting up a LAMP stack, like a Linux, Apache, MySQL, PHP stack. And I could do it in like 20 minutes, tuned, and I was really proud of it. And then one day I was using AWS and I was using like the Bitnami deployer, and it was like deploy LAMP stack button, and it just did it. And I was like,
I'm out of a job.
I'm never going to do that again.
Yeah.
Like that skill is now completely useless. Similarly, like that was just to set up the server, let alone deploying stuff onto it. It's a similar kind of paradigm shift when you adopt GitOps, because it's like, oh, I can literally configure my entire stack instantly. And like coming from Terraform, you're like, oh, well, I can kind of do that with Terraform because I create these modules for my applications, and and then I do my Terraform apply and I'm rocking and rolling. But like that's great for creating like bootstrapping infrastructure, but like to keep it up to date and put it into like a development workflow, this is so much faster, dramatically faster. I mean, I just imported like 10 applications, right? And if I'm using application sets, I mean, I could have imported 100 or 500. I mean, it doesn't matter. Like there's no limit on it. Once I have it defined in Git, I can just pull it in, it syncs, it's rocking and rolling. So that's like I just imported all these applications because I already had them in Git. And to define them in Git is not hard. I mean, I could do it. You saw how we can do it using the UI, but to do it in Git, it's just YAML. And if I go and look at my application set that I have in staging, this is also just YAML, and you can see I have generators. And in this case, I basically am just generating one for staging. I could have any list of arguments. I could also take a CSV. So I could take an argument of CSVs and it would generate for those. I could take an argument of some folder structure files or whatever, and I can generate off of those. Really, really, really effective. I mean, it's super strong. So boom, imported applications. Next up, we're going to do a canary release. So triggering a canary release, very simple using GitOps. We just need to specify, we have a rollout object already set up. So if I look at my OSS apps and I look at my colors application and my staging instance, you can see my customization here. And it has, I mentioned there's this object called rollout. And this specifies which services should be used and all that stuff. And if we were to go and if we go and build this really quick.
Dan, could you zoom in your GitHub so that it's a little more clear?
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
So if I look at my manifest for the color app in here, and I do like a customized build, this will show all of the elements here. And basically the way that I'm specifying that I'm going to be using a canary strategy. And the steps for that are, first, it's going to set a wait to 30% traffic. So 30% of my traffic is going to get the new version. Then it's going to wait 35 seconds and it's going to do it again. Now, in this case, I don't have any custom health checks. I could add a health check where it pulls information, it runs a job, whatever we want to do to make sure it's healthy. But for the sake of the demo, we've just kept it really simple. So all I need to do is update this to be a different version. So right now I'm deploying the purple version. Let's deploy the blue version. Go blue. And of course, I'm gonna make a pull request and merge it myself.
just for fun, the last thing we do, just push it straight into main.
You just want me to push one right into main?
Yeah.
My gosh, it's like going against everything I've ever. I don't know if I can handle that. We'll see.
One of us. One of us.
Gobble, gobble. So I just changed. I wasn't really paying attention to what I was changing.
Nice.
The problem with doing a pull request. Yeah, I set it to, yeah, I did it on my staging instance. Okay. So if I look at my colors, staging, Howdy, and we look at the timeline, this is going to pick up the new release. And the GitOps operator basically checks the Git repo every 30 seconds or something. So you can see it's just picked up progressing, and it just kicked off this additional release hat here, and it's already in a suspended status. So if we look at the services, if we look at the current state, you can see this rollout is currently in a pause status. And in this rollout, you can see I've got my old version here and my new version that is spinning up. So there's only 3 pods in the new version. There's a bunch more in the old version. And this is going through the release process. So if I were to look at, I should see my release here. You'll see this is now progressing again. It goes to suspended again. And this will just move through until it's completed the rollout. And will be completed. So there we've got our Canary release going. And if I'll show you really quick on, well, no, I'm not going to get into it. But yeah, again, you can just see the status of everything that's happening. And we could go in and, yeah, we can see the pods are being created. It's getting that done. We can go and look at the logs on these. They're pretty simple. So if I was doing debugging or something. And then in my release timeline, you can see it's picked up the updated service. And I can actually, if I click on this, you can see the whole status and process of what's going on. Now, like I said, in here, I don't have any special cool health checks, but we support health checks from probably 20 different providers. I mean, Datadog and whatever you want to use. You can run your health checks and have it all be customized and doing this stuff. So, yeah, we got our Canary release and we made it happen. That's working. You can see now it's shut down all the old versions. It's all set up only new versions here, and it's completed. And you can see, again, I've attached all my CI information, my pull request information, my issues. And again, these are for the application itself, not just for my repo. See my services, and then of course I can look at all the configuration for the application that's set up. So that's all straightforward, clean, easy to see. We know what's happening. So the last thing to look at, when we started this whole conversation, we were talking about door metrics, right?
Yeah.
Well, this whole thing is supposed to, the symptom of me implementing all this is that my door metrics should improve. So we're so confident in that we actually implemented a Dora dashboard. And if I look at this, it'll actually show me all of my information automatically calculated. And if I'm looking at my, if I'm looking just at my hosted instance, you know, I just redeployed it today and I've deployed 3 times today. I haven't, lead time on these was instant, you know, pretty straightforward. If I look at the rest of my account where I have my hosted instance, you can see that I have an average of 4.9 deployments per day. I average about a day and a half lead time from the time the first commit is made to when that commit makes it into production. And then my change failure rate right now is about 15% because I had a couple of high failure rate release days. And my average time to restore service is 3 days. Now, in this case, you know, I'm looking across many clusters, many applications, and we could drill down and find those things or look at a specific time frame or whatever. But having this tracking helps me just know how well we're doing, and I can check in and say how good are our processes working and all that kind of stuff. We're going to talk briefly too about this whole time I've been showing you guys this topology view, and I've had this hybrid instance where I'm running CI and CD. So all my workflows and things are available there. This has been sitting here with an update. I'm sure everybody's been thinking, why don't you update that, man? Because I was saving it. I was saving it for now. So yeah, you can see I've got all my instance here, my get sources here for this worker, this AWS worker. In this case, it's only managing itself, but I want to upgrade it. So how does that work? Well, I just need to run a CF runtime upgrade on this. And get token, it should prompt me for it. Okay. Now, the real trick to doing this demo is to not accidentally show get tokens.
Yeah.
Wish me luck.
Do you want me to? I could always take it off if you want.
No, you know what? If I can't pull this off, I deserve it.
Okay.
Everybody's getting ready to screenshot as fast as they can.
Clip it, clip it, clip it.
Yeah, right.
Please. I'm just going to do this over here real quick. It did it for me. It did it for me. We're okay. I'm going to continue with the upgrade. All right. So what is this doing? What is this command doing? We're using GitOps. So what do you guys? What's the guess? What do you guys guess this is going to do?
So run a bunch of shell scripts that upgrades everything.
Hell no. You've listened to nothing we have said. All it did is it made a commit for me. And all that commit does is it specifies the new versions that should be deployed for the runtime. So we actually use the runtime to manage itself. And once that's done, I can go back and look at my runtime components, and you can see that these are actually syncing. It's actually updating them. So I'm using Argo CD. I'm using our GitOps operator to manage the GitOps operator. Nice. And it'll go through. It'll take a little while. It'll sync all these, and then the upgrade will be complete, and I will no longer have a red mark on it that says out of date. This hybrid infrastructure is really cool. So we've talked about the hosted a bunch, which is where the GitOps operator is running on Codefresh's servers, but you probably want to have them running on your own servers, right? So that's where this hybrid comes in. And hybrid basically means that we install the GitOps runtime. You install it on your own servers, and everything runs from there. Now, the cool thing about this from an architecture standpoint, let's just go to Codefresh. So the runtime, we just spent the whole time talking about hosted. Yeah. So that's straightforward. The hosted runtime sitting on the Codefresh platform, right? And the hosted runtime needs to have access to Git, and I need to have access to it. And this control plane, which we haven't really talked about, which is happening in Codefresh, is like, let's say I have 500 instances GitOps operators. Well, I could log into each of them manually, individually, but the control plane basically rolls everything up into one. My browser is blurry. Oh. Is that just like is it showing up blurry for you, or is this just a bandwidth thing where like maybe they need to take a second?
It looks...
No, it's a bitrate thing, I think.
Okay. I think I can see it on mine.
I also have it maximized on my screen, so
I'll throw this link in the chat, and you can go and check it out directly. Okay, so then let's talk about the hybrid. So under the hybrid system, this is a little bit different. So I've got my own environment here that I own. I've got my own runtime cluster here, and I deploy my Codefresh components, my Argo components onto that runtime. Now, the only thing that's going to be exposed to Codefresh is going to come outbound from my runtime cluster. So let's say I'm running this in like a virtual private cloud, or I'm running it on my laptop. Codefresh obviously can't connect to my laptop. So this basically creates a tunnel back to the control plane to provide information. Now, for you in the browser, I need access to the ingress controller for this runtime in order to collect information from it, but Codefresh doesn't. So this is basically a zero trust model where if I'm running a bunch of these runtimes, Codefresh doesn't really have access to them. We get reporting and metadata information that's exposed in the control plane. But then I, as a user, if I basically need to VPN in to wherever this runtime cluster is, and that will allow me to, via my browser, actually get information about it. So that's actually just happening client side in the browser. So from a trust perspective, you don't really have to trust Codefresh to use this. And one of the interesting things that I've seen happen is we've have like a lot of like banking customers or like Department of Defense people, or, you know, those kinds of folks. They're very finicky about what control and access they want to have in Codefresh's hands. While we do have a full on-prem model that people can do, and there are a few very special cases that makes sense for, most people end up actually just using this. Even these highly sensitive customers, because they find that, hey, all my sensitive information is on my servers. You don't have access to it. I can manage the access via the, you know, if users want to get access to it, they're going to have to VPN in or whatever it is. They have to be in the right location, the right network. And this meets their needs from that perspective. These runtime, yeah, go ahead.
Could I jump in real quick?
Yeah, please. I've been talking a lot. Jump in always.
Yeah. This is something of a bit of a question that I have, because I've been working a little bit with EKS-A, so EKS Anywhere. Mm-hmm. For chat, that's basically it's a deployment of EKS that you can just deploy anywhere, and it'll connect back to the AWS control plane. Yeah, exactly. And some of the issues that I know exist within EKS-A is, you know, disconnects from the control plane itself. How does Codefresh manage that, or is that like a problem that you don't even have to deal with?
So when this is actually a really great advantage of GitOps, because if you have disconnects where the EKS instance that you have running on-prem is disconnecting from the AWS control plane or whatever, and so you're like, oh man, I want to deploy to it, I want to mess with it, and for some reason this connection, it's finicky, it's bad or whatever. Well, guess what? We have the GitOps agent, the GitOps operator is installed on that cluster. So to deploy to it, I just make a git commit. So I don't need access to the cluster. And in fact, we have a lot of customers that do edge use cases. So they have like, it's a good example. Let's say they have 5,000 locations where they need a Kubernetes cluster. They don't want to manage the networking to 5,000 different locations. So the GitOps instance, once it's deployed, it pulls information to it, and I can still manage it using the Codefresh UI. And if it gets disconnected, it's got a finicky connection, I don't care. Like, I mean, maybe it will take a little bit longer for it to pick up changes. Maybe it'll take a little bit longer for me to get information back about it, but it's actually going to continue to operate and continue to update and upgrade and do what it needs to do. And I'll get eventual consistency out of it. So EKS Anywhere is like a perfect use case. I mean, they're all perfect use cases, I think, that we've talked about, but EKS Anywhere is definitely a good use case.
Yeah.
Yeah, so these instances, you can have them deploying to any number of clusters. They could deploy to 1 cluster or 1,000 clusters. And The only caveat is wherever the runtime is, it needs to be able to reach the cluster, and this runtime needs to be able to access the resources in Git. So if you have an on-prem Git, Codefresh doesn't ever need access to it. Only this runtime does, and that runtime is, wherever you deployed it. So you could see like a virtual private cloud where you have a Bitbucket instance or a GitLab instance, and you've got your clusters, and you're using this to deploy and rock and roll and do all your stuff. But Codefresh doesn't have access to it. It's only the GitOps operators, the GitOps runtimes that have access to them. Make sense?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, let's see. I was looking at the chat, and I think we've addressed most of the questions as we went along, and we were able to show off all this stuff. I mean, just to take like a quick detour, like we do have these delivery pipelines, CI pipelines. So to create a CI process, in this case, I have like, we didn't talk about CI at all, but here I've got workflow templates that check out a Git repo, build it, push it, deploy it, attach the information. And where Codefresh is, I think, really unique and special on CI is with the idea of shared pipelines. So everyone going back to World of Jenkins is very familiar with the idea of, oh, I have an application in a repo, I drop in a pipeline YAML or whatever, and it runs the pipeline. So every application has its own repo, and every repo has its own pipelines, and every repo has its own process, which is really cool if you want all of your applications to be special snowflakes. Do you feel like there's a trap in what I've just set up for you?
Of course.
Oh,
yeah, there's a trap, right? So instead, what you can do are what we call shared pipelines. And I'll show you just a diagram of this. We won't, I mean, I think we'll finish up and we won't go deep into this. But if I go over and look at a shared pipeline diagram that I have really quick. So with a shared pipeline, you create one pipeline, and then you have a trigger for each application. Now, the trigger is special. I make a commit, I make a release, whatever. When that trigger fires to a single predefined pipeline, that pipeline says, here's my trigger, and this trigger tells me this is the code I'm going to check out. This is the build that I'm going to build. This is the destination for the artifact. This is the test these are the tests that I'm going to run, because that information is all inferred from the repository where the application lives. And now, instead of creating 10,000 pipelines for 10,000 apps, I can create one pipeline with 10,000 triggers. And now, instead of making a special Snowflake repo for each application, I can just sync up. I can just say, hey, every time you add an application, just follow this pattern with your directory structure, and I'll go build a Docker file. I don't care if it's a Go application or a PHP application or a .NET application. I'm going to build a Docker file. I'm going to go build a Docker image. I'm going to run some tests. Okay, just follow this structure. And so now to onboard an application is super easy because I just have this simple flow to follow. And so shared pipelines are like a really, really, really important core concept of what we recommend to get the most out of GitOps.
And so in that diagram for the shared pipelines, it looks like it's just spitting out to the one repo, but are you saying like, even though you could have, like you said, all those different applications utilizing the same pipelines, but they're all doing a Docker file or would you have those go to different repos as well?
Well, so the way that this is actually going to operate in practice, just to like walk through a whole flow, I've got each of my application repos, right? And I'm making a change, and I want to get back test information and make sure that it's good and it's happening. And that's a CI pipeline. So I have a shared CI pipeline. for each of these. I have just one CI pipeline defined, and all these application repos are going to take advantage of it. Now, at the end, what I'm going to want to do is I'm going to want to use CD pipelines to generate new manifests, generate a pull request, maybe generate preview environments for the changes, and to do additional testing. So this is going to be another shared pipeline, typically, that's going to be generating the manifest and generating the pull requests onto a single GitOps repo or deployment repo. So like if you look at that OSS apps repo, I could have 1,000 applications in there, right? So that's the pull request is going to that repo to say, hey, go and deploy my stuff. Now, the pull request generation of the preview environments, I'll tell you, using the application sets that I talked about, you can actually have it say, hey, generate for me a one-off environment for every pull request.
Oh,
and every time somebody opens a pull request, it generates an application, syncs it to a cluster, and syncs it to a one-off environment, and spits back like a URL that I can use to go and see what's going on. And then when the pull request is shut down, well, I've removed it from the definition of my application set. So now it's just removed.
Got it. Okay.
So these short-lived environments. And then once it's on the Git repo, the GitOps operator takes place and it syncs the changes and you're on your way.
Okay.
So that's like when we talk about the Codefresh platform, we've been talking a lot about the GitOps side of it, but really it's actually all these things. It's a whole platform: CI pipelines, CD pipelines, GitOps, release validation, remediation, and all of this is integrated into a single platform. So I'm able to jump between them. They're all tightly integrated. If you're already an Argo user and you're like, oh yeah, I really would love to have like workflows integrated with CD, like we do that, right? But then we pull out all this information, and at the end of the day, because we're aware of what's happening back in Git, and we're aware of what's deployed and where, we're able to then generate all kinds of interesting insights. So I showed you just some that we have in the platform today that go to like showing me what Jira tickets were involved and who the committers were, those kinds of things. But there is so much more that we can do. And we're in a very unique position to do it. And I won't get into that too much. But somebody said, can you show an example of a trigger in the pipeline?
Yeah. I was just about to throw that out there.
Let's do that. So I think I have one that I could show you here. So let's go look at this workflow here. So here I have trigger conditions, and I have a Git event for a release trigger. And this is looking for anytime I cut a release to the color-coded repo. I could have 500 repos in this list. And then it takes arguments and fills those in.
Oh, cool.
And when I look at the manifests, I have a sensor. And in this case, it's looking, these are all created. These I created all automatically when I generated, because you can see there's quite a few arguments for it. But this is looking for, basically you have an event source and you have a sensor. So the event source is going to be like GitHub, and I have like a token. And then the sensor is going to be the specific events that I'm looking for. And in this case, I'm looking for a release. And not only that, but I'm also looking for like a specific repository. But and these workflows are also all defined with Git. So they're all just sitting in one repo, and you can see my update history here. And we could go jump into my commit, and you can see for my Git source here, I've got my pipelines and my event sources and things all sitting here. That's an example. And then when I'm looking in the workflow itself, in this case, this actually isn't a shared pipeline, so it's not the best example. I could show you in Codefresh, but you can see there's a sensor here, and this shows me all the information from the sensor that was triggered. And then I can examine the inputs and outputs and all that kind of stuff. I think I can show you one really quick.
Is it essentially like a webhook, basically?
Yeah, it's a webhook.
Okay.
When you make that git commit, it actually Argo events goes and registers a webhook to trigger those, and then it monitors them. And if I look at production here, and I look at like a CI pipeline, I bet some of these are in shared pipelines. So if I look at this one is probably a shared pipeline. So this one is set up so that this is like anytime somebody merges a PR and it wants to promote changes, this is like the workflow that runs. So we go back and look at these. Anyway, that gives you the idea. We have a whole template library of workflows to work with. So for generating pull requests and all those kinds of things. Yeah, here's a good one, like this CI pipeline. This one's going to be a shared pipeline. It probably has a bunch of, I might not have access on these ones. See if I can see who all the triggers are. Oh, this one's only attached on one. Well, anyway, you get the idea.
There we go. Yeah. Any push event. Very nice.
Yeah, simple. So yeah, shared pipelines. Those are super powerful. We use those a lot.
Cool. So does Codefresh support connecting clusters across different VPCs? Like,
yeah,
I think.
Yeah. So go ahead.
No, that's all. Just I remember we mentioned it earlier, and so I wanted to bring it up.
Yeah. So you just need a runtime essentially per VPC. There are some customized ways you can do like tunneling between VPCs, but generally it's just easier to have a runtime per VPC. And once you're in the Codefresh dashboard, you don't really care.
You don't care where it is. Yeah.
Where it is, because they're all going to roll up into one view that anybody, you can set controls around that and stuff. But you don't have to care really where it is and how many you have. So managing 50 runtimes, not hard because it's all done with GitOps, right? So it's very easy.
Yeah. Okay, that makes sense. Cool. Well, I don't. Did you have anything else you wanted to show us, Dan? Like,
I have one last thing.
Yeah, go for it. Go for it.
One last. That's the Steve Jobs style, right?
Yeah, right.
One more thing. All the stuff I've been talking about a ton of best practice stuff.
Yeah.
And people are like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, you gave you mentioned something, and like I don't know how to actually do that thing. How do I actually do it? I have something for you, and it is a gift for everybody. Come bearing gifts. Codefresh.io, Argo, get certified. Oh, well, this is going to put me in my dashboard.
No.
Can I help you? We have a free certification training that you can do for this stuff. And we have the first course is currently available. It's GitOps Fundamentals. And it'll teach you how to do GitOps using Argo CD. And it'll show you how to structure your Git repos and do a canary release and create applications and do all that stuff. And then GitOps at Scale is currently in preview mode because we're going to be releasing it at ArgoCon. And if you're not registered for ArgoCon, it's happening next month. We're only a few weeks away from ArgoCon. And if you're coming, just joining online, you can register for free. And you can do the certification for level 2 live and level 1 live. And so you can self-serve. You can self-service these. They're free right now. We have just passed, I want to say a week ago, the 10,000 student mark. And we launched it earlier this year. So it's been incredibly popular. And the feedback we've had from it is, this is the best way to learn GitOps. This is the best way to learn how to do this stuff and to get beyond just theory, get practical, and actually get hands-on. We provide these environments so you can actually, it'll actually spin up a Kubernetes cluster in your browser, and you can do everything in the browser. so you don't even have to like you kind of get some free resources to make that stuff happen. And we're going to be adding a module specifically about AWS very soon as well. So look forward to that. But no, that's my last thing. My last thing is go get certified, get the GitOps certification. Tell me on Twitter, follow me on Twitter would be nice, you know?
Yeah, go ahead. I was gonna say, go ahead and plug. Let's go ahead and call to action and plug away. You already got a head start on me, so.
Follow me on Twitter. I'm getting ready to pass that 2,000 follower mark.
Nice.
Really appreciate that. Go try Codefresh hosted. It's free. We give you a free instance, and so you can actually just go and start deploying and set up your repos and get hands-on with this stuff. And so go do that. So get certified, follow me, create a Codefresh account, and try out the hosted GitOps, and actually just start doing this stuff. I think you'll be really impressed, really happy with how much it speeds up your deployments and those kinds of things. And it works really well with all of those kind of infrastructure management tools that people love. And there you go.
Awesome.
That's the stuff.
No, definitely. I'm gonna definitely. Yeah, I was kind of a little quiet this because I was trying to pay attention like this whole time. Like I'm not trying to like. I was just like, just trying to process everything. Holy cats, cool.
Well, I did a lot of stuff. I don't know if it was twitchy enough or if it felt
it was good. I was just I didn't know what to say because I'm like, wow, yeah, that's cool. I'm trying to process everything in my head. So, that was great.
Since this is Howdy Partner, you can, if you end up going with like Codefresh Enterprise and you're like, oh, we're going to onboard 10,000 developers or whatever, you can transact through AWS. So we have an AWS partner listing. And so like, that's a nice thing.
Yeah. That's why the name of the show is there. So that way we can help facilitate that for sure.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
Cool. At Dan, do you have a Slack help channel?
Oh,
from VJ1900.
VJ1900. Okay. You're going to hear it here first. I wasn't going to say anything about it, but with the level 2 certification, we are actually launching a new community, and I won't say anything more about it, but go sign up for the certification, go register for ArgoCon, and we'll get you an invite. But feel free to ping me on Twitter, and feel free to ping. I am on the CNCF Slack as well. On there is Dan Garfield. So okay. Twitter's great, and then sign up for that certification, and you'll get an invite to this new community we're starting. And it's going to be a lot of fun and mayhem happening there.
Cool. That was your real. There's one more thing. Yeah.
That was my real. There's one more thing.
That's that
was the one more thing for my one more thing.
Yeah. Cool. Well, Shardul, I don't know if you have anything else you want to say. We can we'll go ahead and sign off. Thank you everyone for coming on with Codefresh and Dan. If you want these, this will be on VODs on the Howdy Partner Show channel. You can follow along if you didn't get to see this live. I don't know what else to say. Good stuff.
Perfect. Yeah, thanks for having us on, man. I appreciate it, and I hopefully, it wasn't too one-sided of me just spraying information at everybody.
No, absolutely not. No, for sure. Great. I'm sorry, I'm like so whatever right now. Anyway,
ooh, you know what? I'll take advantage. Christian, who had to jump off earlier, started a new Twitch stream called GitOps the Planet.
Oh, wow. Okay.
They just did their second episode this week, so go subscribe to that. GitOps the Planet. A lot of fun. Christian is like hilarious. I'm sorry we didn't get more of him today, but GitOps the Planet. That's where it's at.
Oh, imagine if cars were GitOpsable.
Yeah.
That's right.
Is that twitch.tv/GitOps the Planet? Is that what it's just called?
I don't know. No.
No.
Oh, it's on
No.
YouTube.
It's on YouTube, and it is on. What channel is this? It's like the developer skills channel. I am actually confused. I'm not sure how that's set up. Actually, who knows? I was just
Okay.
watching on YouTube. I'm a Twitch newbie.
Okay,
you can also just follow Twitch TV / Codefresh CICD. Yeah, it's on there. So I just posted a link to the channel.
Okay. Yeah, I have to go, and since I'm a mod, like they don't let regular people do links and stuff on.
Oh yeah, you got to promote it.
Yep. There we go.
Yeah, I was
no, that's not it.
wondering why
That's not it. Where'd it
you
go?
didn't promote my affiliate links to AWS that I had. I was going to promote a bunch of affiliate links. What the heck? I was going to promote my merch, you know?
Hey, if you got it, let me know.
I don't have that.
There it is. Okay. Yeah. Twitch.
We did it.
Okay, you got it up. All right, cool.
Yeah, thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for coming, and we would love to have you back for sure whenever you want, pretty much. Just reach out to us. We'll reach out to you. We can make this happen.
Absolutely.
If there's any updates or any new things you're excited about. So, yeah, I guess from everyone here at Howdy Partner, happy trails and have a great day.
Thanks, guys. Take care.